Okay, well, good morning. Good morning. Welcome, everybody, to our final webinar of the year. My name is Chris Downey, and I am a partner with Brivia, and I'm excited to be here with you to share this final webinar, The Power of Belief. Better is Possible. I will introduce our speaker, Steve de Groot, in just a couple of minutes here. But one of the things I want to just highlight that you'll see on the screen here is there's a link to our website or even the QR code. That brings you to our whole catalog of webinars. And we post these there for you to access anytime, free of charge. In fact, we encourage you to go through them even as a team. It's a great team building exercise. In fact, we have an image of some friends from Australia doing just that. So we really encourage you to do that. And in that this is our final webinar of the year, one of the things I'd like to say on behalf of the entire Brivia team is a sincere thank you to all of you that have joined us throughout the year for a webinar. Some of you might be here for your first time, and thank you for joining us today. And some of you have been here for every webinar. We have had over 3,000 registrations throughout the year this season. So we just really want to thank you for your commitment. We started these webinars as a way to stay connected with our network, and it has exploded into something far beyond what we ever imagined. So thank you so much for your support. For today's webinar, we're here for 45 minutes. As you know, for those of you that participated before, we want to make this as interactive as possible. So let's use the chat. Let's use the Q&A. Let's not wait till a Q&A period. Those of you that know that Steve loves to engage. In fact, I'm going to encourage you to engage right now in the chat, and let us know where you're joining us from this morning. I am joining you from my basement in snowy Winnipeg, Manitoba. Excited to be here with you all. Also know that the session is going to be recorded as well as they all are, and we will make that available to you after the session is complete. So we will send it to you so you can listen to it at any time and share it with anyone that you feel could benefit from this webinar. I will come back at the end with just a few additional takeaways. And I love seeing the chat. We've got people from all across the country, which is just great. So let me now introduce our speaker for the day, Steve de Groot. Many of you know him. Steve is as he calls himself, a human behavior enthusiast. I know Steve as someone that is just committed to helping others get better, however they define better. And Steve has been doing this his whole life and his whole professional career. He's done this as an associate professor of human behavior, as a therapist, as a founder of the Getting to Better initiative, and now, of course, as our president at Brivia. Steve is also an author of Sage Publication, a book called Responsive Leadership, which is used in education institutions all over the world. And Steve's actually in the process of writing his next book right now about the core algorithm, which is a dynamic framework for optimizing human potential that's slated for release in fall of 2023. So we will share more information with you about that in the months to come, and even give you some pre-order information. But I'm excited for this topic, and I'm excited to hand the mic over to a good friend and colleague, Steve de Groot. Steve?
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Am I audible? I just realized I didn't do my hair today. Awesome.
Wonderful. Great. You look great.
What a great time to figure out whether we did our hair or not. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm going to believe that my hair is going to be fine today. The power of belief. That's what we're doing. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate such a wonderful introduction. You must have got it from my mom. Today, thank you for being here, everyone. Snowy Winnipeg. It's apparently we're bracing ourselves for snow in Toronto this week. Today, it's my hope not only to thank you for being here, but to validate and affirm what you know to be true. Right? What you know already deep inside you. I want to also gently challenge what we think we know to be true, things that we think we know, right? We talk about this thing called belief. We talk about the power it has. And the thing about belief is it can get all of us to better, everybody around us, right? So today's session is meant to be inspiring. As Chris said, we're going into the holiday season. So I'm going to actually end this session today telling you or informing you what the greatest gift you can give to the people around you is. Right? It was designed, so inspirational and informative, but it was also designed to strengthen belief and other things like trust, confidence, and subsequently the impact that those great things have on us. So thank you for being here. And as Chris said, all of our webinars are free. I want you to jump in the chat. I see the chat already. There's people from across the country, other parts of the world. That's awesome. Today, we're going to be talking about the power of belief. And I like to reflect on your own experience, right? To make it real, to make it relevant, to make it relatable. So I want you to take a moment to reflect, okay? I want you to think about a time in your life. It could be school, it could be sports, it could be work, it could be anywhere at any time, when you were uncertain about whether you were capable of doing something better, or being better at something, right? We can all relate to this. A time when you doubted your capability, okay? But someone believed in you. So I want you to think about that, right? So you doubted your capability, but somebody else in your world believed in you at a time when you did not believe in yourself. We've all been there, okay? I mean, if you haven't, I'd love to talk to you. Maybe take what you're taking, right? Doubting ourselves and our own capabilities. And while it's different for all of us, we've all been there, right? There's similarities like uncertainty, confusion, frustration, anxiety, or even fear. It can be really scary. It can be a lonely place to doubt ourselves, to doubt what we're capable. It's not uncommon in those moments, not just to question our own capability, but sometimes we question everything. We question, can I do it? Is it enough? Am I enough? So let's move on from the negative experience. Let's get in to the positive aspects of that moment. I want to see this in the chat. I want to see yes, maybe, or no. I want to see this in the chat. Has there been a time when somebody believed in you at a time when you were having trouble believing in you? Okay, so I'd like to see that in the chat. Did someone believe in you at a time that you had trouble believing in yourself? Of course, I see yes, awesome. Thank you, Patty, right? I love this, yes. Well, maybe it was in a moment, right? A specific situation, right? Or a point in time. Maybe it was over a longer period of time in a situation where things change, possibly requiring new information, new knowledge, new skills, new abilities. Maybe it was something absolutely, totally new. And as humans, I think you can relate to that. We jump into things that are totally new, right? Something you've never done before. And I love seeing in the chat. I love it. This is amazing. I'm already getting goosebumps. I get excited, right? About humans. Let me ask you this question. Would you say that that belief at that point in time had an impact on you? Did it have a positive impact on your confidence? I want to see that in the chat. Yes, maybe no. Did it have a positive impact on your confidence? Let's take it a little bit further. Did it have a positive impact on your attitude? Maybe it had a positive impact on your behavior. All right, look at this. I felt like I could try and live up to it. Extremely, absolutely. I love these big words. Did it improve your performance? Right? So I want to go from the inspirational to the practical like we do at Brivia. I also want you to hold on to your experiences. Okay, I want you to hold on to that experience. I love you. Have a look at the chat. There's some really, really great things in there. I want you to hold on to that great experience because I want to share a story about a boy, and I want to share a story about this boy and the power of belief. And it's a true story. And if you want references, I have lots of them, right? Sometimes it's hard to believe unless we see it. We're going to talk about that, the importance of evidence for better, right? So this boy, his name was Christopher. He was when I met him, he was in a level 5 group home. He had 3 full-time staff, 24 hours a day, mostly because of his volatility, mostly because of his violence towards himself and other people. He spent a lot of time in solitary confinement and in areas where he had to be by himself. He was consistently being physically tied down and chemically restrained, right? We were told that he would never be able to function with kids his own age. He would never be able to go to school. He won't be able to work. He won't be able to relate, right? On and on and on. And when I met the team that was supporting him, I heard a lot of things like he can't, he won't, he'll never, right? Situation was bleak, to say the least, okay? I had the privilege of working with a new team when I started working with Chris, right? And it was amazing. We supported Chris, and Christopher, after 2 years, was going to school full-time. He played cornerback on the high school football team, started. He had a girlfriend who was awesome. He was working part-time and he was going to school. He was off all of his medications. He was doing so well that he became the first young adult in Manitoba under the age of 18, approved by a judge to be permitted to live in care independently. And in one of the final interviews, when we interviewed Christopher and our team took notes and we were so excited, we celebrated. And we asked him what made the difference. He told us a lot of things, but without even blinking, he said 4 really important words. He said, "You believed in me." And hundreds of kids like Christopher, right, in jails, in care, have demonstrated this over and over and over to us, right? Right? It's been amazing. It's a powerful story, but you can relate, and we all can relate to this story in some way. Due to uncertainty, right? Due to doubt, due to anxiety, even fear, every single one of us has experienced a crisis of confidence, right? We know what that's like. And whether better was possible, the difference between giving up or getting up in moments was the belief in us by someone else. The belief in us by someone else can make the difference between giving up and giving it one more try, right? And then another, and then another, and then another. And when you think back to your reflection, I want you to go back to your very own reflection, right? Some great things in the chat, right? I love seeing the chat. Make sure you read the chat. I want to see in the chat. When someone believed in you, go back to that moment, right? See that Adam mentioned that people perform when they're encouraged and people believe in their own abilities. Absolutely. Let me ask you this. How did you know? How did you know for sure that somebody believed in you? I want to see this in the chat. Were there visible efforts? Did they say something? Did they do something? What did they do? Were there actions, right? Were they doing something? Were there inactions? Like, were there things that they didn't do purposely? Were there interactions that were concrete indications to you that led you to believe that they believed in you? They used the words, "I believe in you." Thank you, Rhonda. Grace, I could see it in their eyes. Awesome. Awesome. I love this, right? They began to initiate the leadership. Awesome. I love it. I love it. They challenged your training, immediately got the help you needed. So they supported you. They personally told you, and then they supported you through the journey. They walked with you. Thank you, Steve. Neil, great. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Let's move beyond this. There's something that we've been saying at Brivia for decades, right? Belief equals effort equals outcome. And what I'm seeing in the chat is that the belief started, it all started. Sometimes the success or failure of something or someone begins with the belief. Practical support in concrete ways. See, so this is really important. I love belief. It could be equals or it could be determines. Belief determines effort, determines outcome. Think about the things that you believe in or don't believe are possible. Like, or take a moment. I don't want to see it in the chat, right? How much effort do you put into the things that you believe are possible versus those things that are not, right? Because there's a difference between knowing and believing. We know a lot of things, right? We know a lot of things. We know we know, quite a bit, but do we really believe it? What do we get up for in the morning? Who do we get up for in the morning? Where do we put our efforts and our energies? We place them into the things we believe or we value, which are the things and the people that we believe in. See, real belief equals real effort, and real effort leads to real outcomes, right? I often say, right, if you kind of believe, well, we're going to kind of put some efforts in. We're going to kind of get some results. Now, if you're okay with kind of results, that's okay. But most of us aren't, especially when it comes to the people we care about, especially when it comes to us, right? Real efforts lead to real outcomes. So what does that mean? Well, you said it in the chat. There are 3 things that we've been talking about quite a bit lately at Brivia, right? They are nurture, encourage, and support. Now, you've already said that in the chat in very different ways. So it starts with the belief, but it also moves into efforts of nurturing. You were nurtured, you were cared for, right? You knew you were important. You saw it in their eyes. I saw that in the chat. They showed you that you were important, you mattered, that the message was you are important. What does encouragement do, right? I think that cheerleading is underrated, right? We'll talk about that towards the end. Encouragement helps you know that you're doing the right thing, that you're on track, that you're focused on what matters, right? It carries messages like, yes, you've got this, Karen. Yes, you've got this, Christopher. You've got this, Steve. You can do it, and you're doing it. Efforts of support, practical support. We saw that in the chat, right? Support helps us, lets us know that we have assistance, that someone's carrying part of the load, that they have our back, right? That if we fall, they're there to help us get up. It's about dependability, reliability, consistency, right? So it starts with belief and it moves into efforts, and efforts help us get the outcomes. And this is what I know most of you know I love humans. Humans are amazing. We're born with phenomenal and unlimited potential. We must believe in the good of people and the potential that they have. That's where it starts, right? You are amazing, right? So when I say humans are amazing, I work with lots of them. I'm so fortunate. And most of you would agree that humans are amazing. And then I go, you are amazing. And people go, well, I'm all right. Or there's that kind of belief. There's that doubt. Let me tell you that you are awesome. The evidence is all around us that humans are amazing. We put people on the moon. We've built underwater irrigation systems. We built the internet, right? Here's the cool news. If you're doubting whether you're awesome or not, right? By the time you were 2 years old, you accomplished one of the most difficult human skills ever. You learned a language. You were already a genius by 2 years old. And for some of us, including Einstein, right? Including Einstein, it took a little bit later. But just by virtue of being human, you're amazing. Now we're talking about belief and potential here, okay? Not performance. Not performance. People are like, well, I'm not performing. So-and-so's not performing. They're not really living up to, right? We're not talking about performance. Our performance is not our potential. See, potential is invisible, right? That's why we've got to believe in it to bring it forward. We've got to believe that there's so much more there than what we see, right? We're talking about the belief in people and the belief in their potential, not our performance, because our current performance is not our potential, not even close, okay? Right, I love it. Great stuff in the chat. Thank you, Lamia, right? Beliefs directly influence the goals we set, our motivation for achieving them. Absolutely. We're going to move from inspirational into practical too, right? One of our favorite people, right, who's not with us anymore, Dr. Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, said something really important. If we take people as they are, we actually make them worse. What? See, if we believe in their potential and we nurture and encourage and support what they are capable of and look beyond how they're currently behaving, how they're performing, we promote them to be what they can really be. And you felt this, everyone here, you felt this before, you've seen this before, right? I love what he says. Like, I often call myself an idealist realist, and people are like, how's that possible, Steve? You're either one or the other, right? Some people say, well, I'm just the realist. And then they give me this pessimistic attitude. And I'm like, I want to respect the skepticism. I really do. But sometimes we have to be idealists. We have to be a little bit ideal or even naive, right? I've done things now, 10 years ago, I said were impossible. And that's only because I didn't believe they were true. I had to be naive. Some people call it magical, right? Call it what you want. Viktor Frankl was influenced by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Right? And this is a direct quote. It's a mouthful, but it speaks to a lot of our experiences. If you treat an individual as they are, they will remain how they are. Remember when I met Chris? He won't, he can't, he'll never, he won't, he can't. And they were right. They were absolutely right in that way. But if you treat them as they were, what they ought to be and could be, they will become what they ought to be and could be. We become our potential. Okay, this is powerful. We're going to talk about moving it into practical. I hear this voice when I hear some people say, yeah, well, this is magical, Steve, magical thinking, right? Well, let's take it a little bit further. You're human, which means you were born with immense potential. We are not born with confidence. right? Now when we were children, we have uninhibited exploration, right? So we see kids, they're like, wow, I wish I had that kind of confidence. It's not really confidence, right? It's not really belief, like the trust that something's gonna happen. They do feel comfortable because children, their confidence in those environments and the belief that they're gonna be okay are often determined by the relationships and the people in those environments. I'm going to talk a little bit about, let's go into the brain. Dr. Jean Clinton, by the way, is one of my best friends. She wrote the book, Love Builds Brains, and there's lots of research around this. Now we're going to keep it inspirational. I don't want to get into too much into the science, but what's important is our brain is in large part the most important mechanism for our ability to thrive, right? It's developed and strengthened through relationships with other people, right? It's developed through our relationships with others because our brain is a social organ that requires connection, human connection first, above anything else. So our potential is actually activated and actualized in relationships. This is powerful for me, right? Because people can say relationships are soft, but there's a lot of evidence that, let's get into this thing we call the brain. Just quickly, let's dip in to get some evidence for some of our beliefs, right? So our brains grow from the back to the front. They grow first with human connection. This is what's so amazing. There's lots of research that shows that human connection, relationships, touch, sound are the number one thing that activates all of our neurobiology, right? And when we don't have connection, there's a medical term called failure to thrive, that our brains don't grow. But let's take it beyond that. Let's not stay there. The next thing that we need is reliability. Clarity around who's important, what we can anticipate, right? What choices we can make, what's going to happen to us next, right? And our brain literally grows in this order, requiring these three things. Now, connection, clarity, important for what? For our confidence, right? Our confidence, which is also tied to trust and safety, which I'm going to talk about, is connected to the connections we have, the clarity we have, and that is how our confidence is developed and strengthened. Let's go back to your reflection, right? Let's start with what you've said about nurturing. Look at it in the chat. When you go back through the chat, nurture is important because it's about caring. Nurturing is important because you're important. It reinforces and feeds that requirement for connection. Encouragement. Why is encouragement so important? Well, it's about knowing you're on the right track, right? Knowing that you're doing the right thing in the right way. Knowing that you've got this, you can do this, right? You're doing it. It reinforces and feeds our brain, our heart, our soul's requirement for clarity. And that support is that external source of confidence building. It's about dependability, reliability, safety. I or we are here to help. It reinforces that strong need, that strong requirement for confidence, okay? This is so important. Our trust, our safety were developed through relationships that provided connection, clarity, and confidence. Our confidence, this is amazing to me, right? You may not be as excited as me, but our confidence and even our self-belief originates and is strengthened from other people, from relationships. According to my work on the core algorithm that Chris made reference to, right? That never changes. Belief in self, and this is one of the things that I like to challenge when I hear something, well, you didn't believe in yourself, she didn't believe, they didn't believe in themselves. Like, this idea of self-belief, and the belief in self is strengthened in many cases, developed by the belief in us from other people. This really challenges that idea of confidence, that confidence, well, it just happens. You either got it or you don't, you can muster it up, right? That it's got to do just with grit or internal individual fortitude. Often the difference between whether we believe or we don't believe, whether we have confidence or we don't have confidence, whether we can or whether we can't, is in large part due to the result of other people and their belief in us. But it's not just belief, right? Belief is the start. because that belief informs our effort, informs our choices, and informs the outcome. So let's take it a little bit further. What makes the efforts so important? I've talked about why they're important, because they feed the requirements of connection, clarity, and control. But it's even more important than that. Those efforts are important because when we have nothing, maybe we have hope, right? I want you to think about how often we talk about hope and when we're talking about it. We often talk about hope when we really need to believe in something, right? Think about when we don't talk about hope, right? So how do we strengthen confidence? It all starts with belief. We've talked about that. Our belief that humans are amazing, that the people around us that we live with, that we care for, have so much potential, it leads to meaningful efforts, and meaningful efforts are connected to what they need and what's important to them and what they're hoping for and what their strengths are, right? And our efforts lead to something really important. It's evidence, right? I've heard people say, yeah, I do believe, but I need a sign, right? What do they say? I sign. What's a sign? Some sort of evidence, some meaningful evidence, right? Belief equals effort equals evidence. And what does that do? That strengthens this thing we call trust. Trust in the other person. See, just like belief and confidence, when we're born, our brains don't have the capacity to trust ourselves yet. So we must trust others before we trust ourselves. And if we're fortunate enough to have people that believe in us and nurture and support and encourage that belief, it builds trust in us, in them. What does that lead to? More efforts, more meaningful efforts towards the things that are important, the things that matter, to develop our capability towards better and whatever better looks like. What does that lead to? More evidence. Oh, did you see what happened? Hope disappeared. I'm going to back up a bit. I think there's an inverse proportion between hope and confidence. When we have real, legitimate, concrete, tangible confidence, hope, while it's great, isn't necessary right now. We'll hold on to it for another time. But when we have someone that believes in us, and let's take it even further, what makes this so powerful, right? What makes this so absolutely powerful that the experience is hard to describe? It's because nurturing and encouraging and support reinforce messages that reinforce real experiences. They give us experiences that you matter, that I matter. They help us feel less alone. They give us the experience that you know what you need to do. You know what's next. You know the next step. You know the next choice. You know the path. It reinforces an important message. You can do this. See, this is what I love about evidence, right? Belief equals into the evidence from the effort is that, yeah, you can do this is a powerful message, isn't it? Isn't it, Maria? Isn't it, Patty? But you know what's even more powerful than you can do this? You have done this. You have done this. Keep going. It also provides the message, you can count on me. I believe in you. I'm going to nurture that belief. I'm going to encourage that belief. I'm going to support that belief. You can count on me. You can count on us. See, this is important, right? The next time you feel like telling someone to believe in themselves, right? Because we do it often and it comes from a really good place. It comes from great intentions, right? Believe in yourself. I want you just to wait for a moment. Wait. Show them that you believe in them. Show them that you believe in them by nurturing that belief, by encouraging that belief, by supporting that belief, right? And what's important about this is that the next time you tell someone you care about, I believe in you, they believe you. See how that works? They'll actually believe you. And with the evidence of better, they will believe in themselves. And then better is possible, right? Right now, More than ever, we humans, when you look around, are struggling more than ever. We seem to be stuck or struggling at work and in life, right? You know who these people are. They're our children, they're our partners, they're our employees, they're our team members, right? Even that person you passed on the street just recently. So one of the things I want to say is this holiday season, give the people that you care about the greatest gift one human can give to another. Give them the power of belief, because it is with belief that getting to better is possible. And as a matter of fact, we actually believe at Brivia that beyond better is possible. Thank you. I'm going to pass it over to Chris and take questions now. Yes, one of my favorite things to do, because I believe you have great questions. So you can throw them in the chat, you can put them in the Q&A, and we're open for questions. Chris, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Awesome, Steve. Thank you for this. And yes, there are some questions, but do keep them coming in. We would love to. We've got about 15 minutes here that we can answer your questions. We'd love to hear them, or even just share your thoughts. Steve, you know I'm passionate about this subject of belief as well. And here's a real practical question that first came up. Actually, what are some practical ways to show somebody we believe in them?
Well, that's a great question. I think there's some good ones in the chat. You know, I think nurturing, giving messages that you care about them, following through and following up, right? If you say you're going to call them, call them. If you say you're going to do something for them, follow through and do it. You know, messages like "I care about you," "I love you," consistently, that are not just done to mask or hide criticism or correction. I think even at work, you know, you can believe in people by giving them some room to grow, giving them opportunities, tuning into their experiences and asking them, what's important to you? You know, what's most important to you? What do you need here to feel successful, right? Those are concrete, tangible efforts. You know, asking people to demonstrate what their strengths are, telling them, you know, commenting on their strengths. You know, when you tell somebody, wow, I really like the way you facilitated that meeting. I really like the way you were organized, you know, and I appreciate that. I like to acknowledge that. Those are concrete ways. So those are nurturing, right? They're encouraging, right? Encouraging next is ensuring that they know with visuals, maybe, right? For some of our kids, right? Concrete evidence that there's a pathway, that these are the right choices. In organizations, you know, we often talk about values. What kind of behaviors constitute those values in practice, right? Calling them out, recognizing them, reinforcing them. And of course, that's nurturing, encouraging, and supporting. Supporting is being reliable and also dependable. So offering to help out. You know, sometimes we ask people, we solve problems and say, hey, what do you need from me? I'm going to listen. And sometimes they say, you know, I could use a reminder or a little bit of help, or can you help me here? And I think those are some practical ways that we can really nurture, encourage, and support the belief that they have the potential to do this.
Awesome. Very, very practical, Steve. Love it. Here's a question. This one saddens me a little bit, but I think it's where.
Okay. I'm already feeling sad for Christopher. So yeah, no, go ahead.
What if I don't know who believes in me?
Well, I do. I know that the people at Brivia do. What do you do when you're not sure who believes in you? I would say, look around you. Look for the people that have reached out to say hi, make eye contact even. Look for the people that have followed up. Look for the people in your life. Maybe not even now. Look back. Sometimes we have to go back, and there's been people that reached out and we didn't respond or reciprocate, right? So I would say start looking for it. Reconnect with the people that you care about, because sometimes it's about it's about momentum too, right? I remember a couple of years ago, I talked to somebody like, no one calls me. And I said, okay, have you called anyone else? And like, well, not really. I'm kind of waiting for them to call me, or my leader at the office never comments on my strengths or what I'm doing well. It's like, okay, well, do they know that that's important to you? And they're like, well, no, not really. So sometimes we need to start the momentum. One of the biggest things I feel that's been helpful for me in my life, I can't speak for other people, is that sometimes when I'm feeling down, I do kind things for other humans and I start to feel better, right? Not expecting anything back. But what's amazing is I'll sometimes just say, hey, can I purchase your eggs in the grocery store? And they smile, right? And it rekindles that connection I need and that clarity that things can be better. And sometimes we can create the momentum. to start getting out of that feeling and just reconnect with the people that are important to us. Okay, I hope that was helpful. You can throw another question if you need clarification in the chat, but that's what comes to mind and comes to heart.
Yeah, no, thanks, Steve. And I think one of the takeaways I'm hearing from you there is belief comes in many forms.
Yeah.
And so I'd be on the lookout for it, because it's often there, even if we can't see it in the moment. Here's a question.
Actually, Chris, I just want to reinforce that, because I love that, Chris Downey. Chris Downey is one of those people in my life I like to have around, because he does things like this. He says amazing things and he cares. And I want to reinforce that, Chris. Like, what you're saying is that you're absolutely right. Belief does come in different forms. And nurturing, encouraging, and supporting comes in different forms. I didn't know that for many years my parents were supporting me in a way, but then I reshifted and realized that their way of believing in me and supporting me looked very different than I'd hoped for. But that was the beginning to start looking for it in other places. So I agree with you, and I think that that's a really good message for people to take away, is to go look around, because love, actually, right, one of my favorite movies, is all around us. Caring is around us, trust is around us, and if we look for it, we can find it. Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate that.
Awesome. This question just came in the chat here. What can you say to someone that keeps reverting back to their depression when they rely on you to motivate them daily, that you believe that they can get to better, ultimately, when people are stuck in their ways?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Sometimes I was thinking about this morning. Some of us have different requirements for belief and for trust and nurturing, encouragement, and support. And some of us, that pit, that void, that opening is really big, and it's going to take a lot. I would say don't go alone, get support, right? Because we can wear ourselves out. I mean, there's the realistic, lovely part about believing, but there's also the efforts can take a toll, right? So connect with what is it that you're doing it for, right? Are you expecting something back? Really go, what do I know about this from this person's perspective? Sometimes they don't know. They don't know that our efforts are meant to nurture, to encourage, and support. So it's even about having a conversation from a respectful, gentle, caring place, right? I notice that I'm trying to do this, and I notice this is happening. Can you tell me about that? Or how about this? I wish I would have learned this years ago, asking people what their currency is for support. Because sometimes we make efforts often at work and in life, and people don't know we're making them because we're using the wrong currency. So it's okay to ask people, I want to nurture you. I want to encourage you. I want to support you. I believe in you. Can you help me with the currency about what I can do, right, within my ability, right? Don't compromise your integrity to be able to make that happen.
Okay. Great, Steve. That was the question that came from Holly, and a powerful question. Holly, thank you for asking that one. And a question just came in from Steve in the chat here. You can probably see it, is how do you coach those in constructive criticisms that don't receive coaching well, or perhaps have different views?
Yeah.
An opportunity to talk about belief, even when we're highlighting an issue. Carry on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think starting with their performance is not their potential. So even when they're reacting or responding in a reluctant or not so positive way, that is a type of performance, right? So they're more capable than that. Also, getting to the practical. I love this question because it's where the rubber hits the road, right? One of the things that we often talk about is the importance of connecting before we direct, or connecting before we correcting, right? We often say connect before we correct. It's very important, first of all, that people feel that when we come to them with constructive feedback, that we've come to them already with their strengths and with relationship building, with connection, with a bunch of other stuff. Because sometimes that resistance or defensiveness or reluctance and apprehension comes from, I'm not sure, I'm just always told I'm wrong, I'm bad, all of this kind of stuff, so that we're able to build on their strengths, buffer the constructive feedback. So it's really important, because I know sometimes we don't want people to hear our constructive feedback as the first or second thing that we're interacting on. The third thing I want to say to this really great question is that we often talk at Myriad, I'm thinking of Christopher, that was Myriad, at Brivia, as making sure that the feedback has meaning. And how do you make feedback meaningful? Well, there's three ways you can think about this. One, what do they need from this constructive feedback? Do we know that they have some needs? Maybe it's their need to grow, okay? So that's one, but there's probably more. What do they value? Well, they value succeeding, they value achieving, they value maybe, okay, so that's the third thing to look at. And what are they hoping for in their job, right? Or in their role, or in life, whatever it is. So then, and I know this is a long answer, but then once I know that those three things, I can approach it and say, something, Steve, Is it still important for you to grow? Yes. Is it still important for you to succeed and achieve great things at work or in life? Yes. And is it still important for you to, and I just lay this on, like to have this, to be able to be better in this area? Yes. Okay, great. I have some feedback for you if you're open to it that will help you with all three of those things. Right? And most people are able to absorb it if they know that our intention is to nurture, encourage, or support what's meaningful for them. So that's my answer. Great question. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Great question indeed. And I think just building on what you're saying there, Steve, what I'm hearing and what you had to say is root your coaching in that your belief in their potential, and perhaps this performance is an impediment to them realizing the potential that you see in them. So I think that's great, Steve.
Yeah.
So here's one last question for you, Steve, and then we'll wrap it up here. We want to be mindful of the time. What if they refuse to believe in my belief in them?
Wow, that's a good one. I think sometimes we just keep gathering the evidence in small parts. We go slow. We don't go too fast. We slow it down. We just stay at it. Consistent efforts to nurture, consistent efforts to encourage, consistent efforts to support. I've been there. I think we've all been there where it feels overwhelming, that it's never enough, right? But here's one of the things that's so critical is as we are starting to understand that the belief in me is dependent upon the belief in others, it's important for us not to give up on that belief. And that's why I often say, surround yourselves with people that believe in you and surround yourself with other people, because it can be difficult, right? Often that refusal to believe may be a couple of things. They don't believe it yet, right? And we got to keep at it. Sometimes what we're also finding is that this deep-rooted lack of belief is often closely connected to whether we value ourselves or not. Am I worth it? Right? Am I valuable enough? Right? And one of the things I've learned is that consistent caring, consistent nurturing, support, and encouragement, you never know when you're going to break through. See, my work with kids in jail and kids in care, so many times, right? The reality was I wanted to give up, but I couldn't. So I took care of myself, surrounded myself with the people that believed in me, held me up so I could get back in there. And what was interesting is you never know how close you are to the top of the mountain, right? If you've ever climbed a mountain, sometimes it gets misty at the top and you're tired and you're exhausted and you're only 3 feet away from the top. I think with people, we never know how close we are from the top. So if you can hang in there, I would encourage you to do that, and also take care of yourself, because that can be mentally, emotionally, and physically draining. And that's why we surround ourselves with people that believe in us, so that we can believe in ourselves, so that we can help others believe in themselves also. So thank you, Chris. Back over to you. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful holiday season. Chris has some things to share. Take care.
Awesome, Steve. Thank you. What a great question to wrap up on. And thank you all for joining us. We will be sending a follow-up email out to you in the days to follow here with the link that we've promised, and also ways to stay in touch with us. In fact, one of the ways to stay in touch with us, we are on LinkedIn, and if you feel that we've added value here and you're on LinkedIn, connect with us and follow us on LinkedIn. We'd appreciate that. We're actually expanding our social media presence to other platforms in 2023. So the more we can stay connected, the better. So if you're on LinkedIn and this is adding value, we encourage you to reach out to keep in touch that way. And also, we will have a new webinar series in 2023 for you all. We're excited to share with you. But keep the connections going. If there's something you want to hear more about, something you want us to talk about, we'd love to hear from you, and happy to incorporate that into our upcoming sessions. So have a fantastic holiday, Happy New Year, and be well, everyone. Take care.